how to be profitable in 2024.
Marketing has really changed.
That there is a path to a career within our practices.
Change your website geared more towards them.
The multi-generational communication conflicts.
People aren't coming to you because you're an in-network provider. They're coming to you because they want a beautiful smile.
This is truly what's on the mind of orthodontists.
You know, having that high level of service.
This day and age, it's all about differentiating yourself.
So happy to be here.
Hey, Colby, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Sam.
All right. So we're just going to jump right into it if that's all right with you.
Hey, yeah, let's do it.
All right, great. What, in your opinion, is on the mind of every orthodontist that they don't have a solution for?
That's a good question, because I think about, what are my concerns in my practice, right? And then also thinking about the greater body of orthodontists. And I see a lot of changes that have been happening in our profession. We've seen DSOs been gobbling up practices, especially in 2021. We're seeing reports of how, the birth rate is declining, and we're concerned about the vitality of our practices moving forward. I think for me, when I think of all those different forces, I think of those as outside factors or outside influences, changes in our referral patterns, Smile Direct Club and their competitors or other types of companies that are opening or closing, or new products that might be coming out, including AI, that may be threatening the way that we kind of live in our practice, or our practice ecosystem, if you will. So I think the solutions that we are missing for some of the problems that we're seeing is potentially where we're headed. We don't really know as a profession right now what the next 10 years of practice are going to look like. I don't think we have a firm grasp of what the referral patterns are going to look like, what types of patients are going to be walking in the door. Are we going to be seeing less kids in the future? Are we going to be seeing less aligner patients, more aligner patients, more adults? I think the numbers that we're seeing and the general prospectus of the market just looks very volatile to me. And it's one thing to start a business. I did a startup a few years ago. I talked to a lot of doctors who are in the midst of doing a startup. And I think they have a vision for maybe the type of practice that they want to have within their four walls. But I think they would feel, like I do in many ways, that the solution to the problems is not quite understood, or that the solution to their problems is not within the four walls of their practice, that it lies somewhere else on the horizon, or it's some other force or some other new technique or something that they're not aware of currently that they need to bring into the practice in order to meet the demands of the market.
I love that insight. I think that's so true. And when I talk to a ton of orthodontists all over the country, and I would have to agree that is kind of where most of their minds are, I think. Well, I'm a big believer in that the obstacle is the way to the solution. You have to face the obstacle head on. So in that mindset and some of the obstacles, and you've even kind of hinted on some of the solutions that might be out there, how can practices lean into these obstacles that you've identified and as a way to help them find the solution?
That's great. Yeah, I think so. We look at there's kind of two aspects to that I think about. One is how we're going to respond to the market, what we're going to be doing differently in our practice to meet the various demands that come in. For me, that has been focusing on experiences. I think that orthodontists that focus on creating an unforgettable experience in their practice will be able to meet people where they're at, create something that they're willing to pay extra money for. Now, it doesn't mean we have to be the most expensive orthodontist in town, or that I'm saying, ditch all insurances and go cash only. But what I'm saying is that we have to have a strategy that appeals to a broad range of people, right? That does something different than what other orthodontists are doing. And I'm not talking about price. That's the first thing. And then the other aspect is how we're going to get more market share, how we're actually going to pull people that maybe were on the fence, or maybe we're worried about coming into the office for whatever reason, and actually draw them into our practice because of those great things that we're doing. I don't think that there's a magic bullet from a marketing company that's going to do this. I mean, we talked a little bit about this before, but with marketing, it's like we see some of the marketing messages out there and they all look the same. They're like, oh, come in for a free consultation or whatever the artwork shows, right? And just getting people to kind of just buy in that orthodontics is all the same everywhere. And it's just not. There is not the same experience had in my office that there might be down the street. And the more that we can put that idea in people's heads, I think we're going to start getting more people actually coming in requesting the services that we have. And that's the best way, I think, to meet the changes that are going on outside of our practices. It's doing something completely unique and different that people truly want, not just the standard offering and hoping that they pick us based on location or price.
I love that. And I think that's very insightful. I think most people in businesses that have kind of a retail type feel where they're trying to attract people from a wide variety of places, they're often most focused on, especially now in orthodontics, location and price, and to really be different. I love your insight there. So thank you. Well, so Dr. Gage, we would love to learn more about you, who you are, what you do. Tell us a little bit about your practice, that we would love to know more about you.
So I graduated in 2015 at Arizona. After practice, I found a great opportunity to go take over a really good practice in Canada, and took over for a retiring doctor. It was a great experience. And we transitioned from a very heavy braces practice to a really heavy aligner practice within a few years, and had 0 scanners and went up to 3 scanners, and really doubled the amount of patients that we were seeing without adding a lot of extra days. So really focusing on being efficient with our time, leveraging technology, and sending a message to the community that we were there, that we were present by doing a lot of community activities, but also that we were doing things differently, and that we were using technology and just good old-fashioned customer service to get things done in a faster, more efficient way. And that message really resonated with people. And it really made a big difference in our day-to-day practice, and just the scope and size of our practice in general. All of those things grew. After doing that for about 5 years, my wife was like, hey, we want to move back down to the United States. And thinking about all the things that I had learned from running such a big operation and having a great couple first years out of practice really framed my thinking about what I was looking for in a practice if I was to buy one. And this was in 2020. So really tough to even go around and meet people because offices were closed, and even just understanding, which practices might be for sale. It's kind of daunting, I mean, we can all look at listings and say, hey, I might buy this practice or move to this area. But we had some strong family ties that pulled us to Colorado. And after the things that I had learned about marketing and also just what I had built in Canada, I thought I'm going to do a startup, because I want to do something different. I want to bring something truly unique to the area and work with the community, try to really plant some strong seeds. I wanted to have a strong philanthropic organization within my practice so we could give free treatment to kids. I also wanted to have a fun kids club and a way to engage kids that wasn't necessarily, with them being glued to screens. I want to do something that they would get kind of hands-on, like I had when I was in Boy Scouts as a kid. So all those things kind of came together in Level Up Orthodontics, which we started in August of 2020. And since then we've grown, obviously a lot, like every startup, but we've had a lot of success specifically with focusing on our experience. The things that we're offering that are different than other offices may not necessarily be the results of treatment. When I've looked at reviews of all the offices in the area, almost none of the reviews talk about results. And I think that's really interesting, because we're sitting here, we're like, hey, I went to school for this. Look how I took this full step class 2 to a class 1 in 12 months. Or look at how I did, this non-surgical case and made it look as good as the surgery case. And we talk about all these amazing things that we do from results. And then, we ask that patient to write a review thinking they're going to talk about how it transformed their life. And they say, I love the team. They made me feel so good. And you're like, well, that's good too. But hey, what about your malocclusion? And I think we get this thinking that that's what we want. And I understood this from looking at all these reviews and reading, hundreds of reviews from various offices. And I thought, wait a minute, like maybe I'm thinking about this wrong. Maybe it's not about the pictures that I can show them, the before and afters. That's a big part of it. And I love the before and after cases that we showcase. But I thought maybe this is about an experience thing. Maybe this is about how we're making people feel. And if we happen to straighten their teeth in the same time, then, all the better, right? I mean, then we're doing 2 sides of the best work that we can do. So that's really been kind of our lodestar or our guiding force at Level Up Orthodontics, is how do we make people feel better? How do we make their goals our own? And we're doing that through experiences. So we're using, specialty products. So we're using the Damon Ultima system to get really great results in a faster, more comfortable way. And we're using WildSmiles Braces for our teenagers and our young kids, specifically because they're asking, when they see that there's designer braces, it changes the dynamic, right? It changes the conversation in the consultation room, because now we're not so much saying, hey, do you want to do treatment? They're saying, hey, can I have these braces, right? Very different type of situation where we're now receiving requests versus, always asking and hoping that they grab onto something or latch onto some of the things that we're talking about. So it's been a really fun ride now, and we're, into year 4 of our startup, learning new things all the time and definitely trying new approaches and having great success. So yeah, thanks for having me on the show here.
First of all, congrats on your success. I mean, I love to see that in all practices, but I also think that you just have a unique ability to, keep a pulse on kind of where consumers are at today. I mean, there's tons of statistics out there about how consumers value experience as much, if not more than the product or service. And,
Yeah.
we've talked a lot about before, why people buy designer bags and why people buy nice cars and, all these things, if we think about it in our own life. So I love your perspective there. It's really great. Now, one quick question for you. If someone wanted to reach out to you, ask you a question, learn about your practice, where would we send them?
Yeah, Instagram's a great place. So I have a team and myself that monitor the Instagram page. So if you have questions about the practice or curious about how we do observation programs, I get a lot of questions about that because of our engagement with kids, or even how we do consultations. We recently attended the Ortho5 meeting here in Colorado and found out that our TC had one of the highest conversion rates in the States. And most months were 90% plus, right? And so it's why is our conversion rate so high? I think there's a few key things that we do, and we can save that for another podcast.
Right.
You're
giving me ideas.
Smiles, WildSmiles and the Damon system and things that have a strong brand identity that align with our messaging and the kind of the emotional connection that we try to make with our patients. All of those things play into it. And I think that's a key reason why we've had so much success, because instead of just taking the stock braces off the shelf or saying, hey, this is an aligner. Yeah, let's dust it off and show you what it looks like here. It's very much about what they're interested in and what their goals are. And then we're handpicking things for them. We're saying, hey, so based on what you're saying or based on the concerns that the dentist had and that you have, this is actually what we're recommending, and making that strong recommendation for them so that their decisions go down, from 20 different things down to one is, are you going to start today? Or are we going to pre-schedule this? So really that's the question. So we're not afraid to be direct. We're not afraid to follow up. And we're definitely not afraid to offer something different.
I love it. Well, I'm sure you'll get a lot of questions. I know this week alone, I've had 2 conversations about ops programs that I've sent them your way. So that's great. I love what you're doing there too. And probably more for another conversation as well. All right. So we want to get back in. We've got 2 more questions for you. We take a step back and we want to look at kind of where our practices and the overall industry really vulnerable, in your opinion.
Well, when you think about a practice, some of the things that have traditionally been in flux with a practice, because if we just said, okay, we're going to start the same number of patients every month, we're going to template this number of consults given this conversion rate, we could kind of figure out how to engineer a practice that looks really stable. But I think that's the issue, is that we do not see that practices are stable right now. We're seeing lower dentist referrals, right? The dentists are either keeping them in-house, or those referral network, especially with associates working at various DSOs that may or may not be referring to us, they don't necessarily have an incentive to refer. They're not going to be around for years and years. And so they don't necessarily care if they see little Johnny grow up from 8 to 18 and send him off to college after years of good dental care. They're more thinking, hey, what's the best associate job to help me pay off my student loans? And those are real concerns. And I don't want to, make those seem unimportant, to our profession. But what's happening is that basically nobody's really taking responsibility for the life cycle of a patient. They're not nurturing these relationships, and it's not really as important as it used to be. So I think we're all concerned about how the ebb and flow of referrals is going to go for our individual practices. And I think that makes us vulnerable because we can't predict what next month is going to do for us. And if we're, beholden to dentist referrals or outside referrals that see a problem and say, oh, this is the person to fix the problem, I think we're missing out on this opportunity to say, I don't necessarily want to fix the problem. I want the experience. And so I'm looking for a place that gives me that experience while I'm in this healthcare, orthodontic setting. So if we can elevate our practices to not just treating problems, but treating people, meeting in the community, meeting people where they're at, partnering with their various clubs, organizations, and sports teams, doing things that help lift up and buoy up the children, it's going to be a lot easier to ask for referrals from their friends and family, because we're basically now part of that group. I'll tell you one thing that actually happened a little while ago. This was with an adult. He came in, he had transferred, he had not been in orthodontic care for a year, but had attachments on his teeth from aligners. And he came into our practice and he was a little bit wishy-washy. He's an executive and really busy. And it was a little bit weird we didn't know if he was going to start, but I saw his attachments and they were stained because they had been on his teeth for a long time. And without asking for a charge or anything, I said, hey, can I take these attachments off your teeth? They look like they've been there for a long time, and I'm sure you don't like having them. And so he left. I did a quick whitening in office for him. Didn't cost me a lot of money or time, but we had a few minutes and I said, hey, let's whiten your teeth too and get some of these stains off. And so he left. We didn't hear from him for 6 months. For 6 months, we did not hear a single word. And then his wife comes in on a totally separate appointment. He's nowhere to be seen. And she comes in and says, hey, I want to do treatment in your office. And we're like, well, who sent you? We're like, how did you hear about it? It's like, oh, my husband came in for a consultation. He said, this is my orthodontist. You should go see him. and we hadn't even started treatment on him yet. And I just remember thinking, I'm like, what kind of impression did we make on this, executive, this man to basically send, his most trusted, his spouse, right? His most loved person to say, go see this person. This is my orthodontist. And that really impacted me, because for a while I thought, man, I got played, or something, like I got taken advantage of here. And my good nature and my willingness to see a problem that I took ownership of because I had a way to fix it. And, spending 10 minutes of my time to just polish up his teeth really quick. All of a sudden he said, I'm sending everybody to your office. And you're not just this guy that helped me or this problem solver. He's my orthodontist. I love that. And that's really changed a little bit of how I feel, what my unique kind of offering is to people, right? Because sometimes, I talk to a lot of doctors that are doing startups and they think, well, what's my thing? What am I grasping onto? Am I going to be the super high end, practice with, just absolute immaculate, office design and all high technology? And sometimes people forget it's like, you are the magic sauce. You as a person is what going to drive people into a startup. It's not going to be necessarily just the products that you're offering, but it's that amalgamation of, a designer or a premium product that meets people's emotional needs, as well with a dedicated doctor who brings with all their unique personalities and their nature, whether it be, really relaxed or fun or super professional and caring as you're looking over complex medical issues. Anything that you're interested in, if you infuse that into your practice, that will be the differentiator. It's going to be you, right? So practices that take the doctor out or take those unique things out of the practice, they're going to be the most vulnerable, because when a referral comes and they're saying, oh, should I refer to this person or this person? Like, well, they both offer aligners, so I guess it really doesn't matter which one. It's like, no, we're not talking about the products anymore. We're saying, I want you to go to this doctor because he or she cares, because they have advanced knowledge or training in certain areas, or because of the way the patients come back and tell me, wow, that office is amazing. I am so glad you sent me there. Or making the strong referral to a friend. This is my orthodontist. You should see him or her. Right?
I love that. Because again, you're taking the vulnerabilities and turning them into the solution, and the place for the product mixed with the doctor and the empathy and this customer service all goes together and creates this unique blend of an experience that they're not going to get anywhere else. So I love that. Yeah. I love that. Well, so we want to end kind of on a high note here. I mean, we've talked about some things that we need to look out for, obstacles, vulnerabilities, but where do you think that practices and the industry are really positioned well for success?
Yeah. So one of the things that I think about of what's made our office so successful is going back to kind of tried and true customer service activities, which I think we've lost a lot since 2020. I think when we were cut off from friends and family and a lot of connections were somewhat severed during that time, I think we forgot what made certain businesses or certain activities for us really enjoyable. And we forgot about the importance of face-to-face communication, right? Because we got so used to Zoom and things like this. Now I love Zoom, right? I love to be able to connect with people anywhere in the world at any time. I also realize that when you're present with someone and actually paying them your full attention, you can get deeper connections than you could over the phone or over the internet, right? So we've really leaned into this real patient-centric experience motif where we are present in people's pockets. We use, a telehealth platform called Grin to connect with our patients, every other week, basically when they're in treatment, to make sure that we're looking at their case and engaging with them and checking up and following up on them. But when they're in the office, we make sure that they have our undivided attention. And that really goes beyond just simply, making sure that patients are running on time or that our chair is running on time, right? That's a key part of it. But the difference is that when they come in the office, they feel like they're the only one there. And I think doctors now, with all the technology that we have with, custom prescription braces, aligners requiring a lot less chair time, we're better positioned now than ever to spend more time with the patient. So if our office is generally booking, let's say, a 30-minute adjustment for a patient, we could look at that and say, okay, how can we optimize that to get that down to 20 minutes for every patient? And then we could see one more patient an hour per chair. And that's a great way to think about it. I love the efficiencies there. And it does take a lot of support staff, to be able to coordinate, shorter intervals and to still deliver a good customer service experience. And I think you can do that. Our approach in the startup, where again, we don't have a huge number of patients at the beginning, was, okay, if we can do an adjustment in 20 minutes, let's say, but we book 30. What can we do in that extra 5 to 10 minutes that makes that patient want to come back and makes this the best part of their day? And whether that's having them, for Mother's Day, we had Mother's Day cards in the practice, and we're having all the kids write a Mother's Day message to their parents. And then we're taking that and mailing it for them, just right so they get it in time for Mother's Day. We're having them, write D-bond thank you letters the day of the D-bond. So spend an extra 5 minutes and write a handwritten letter. We ourselves are writing handwritten birthday cards to our patients, right? So lots of little things that increase the engagement, including some of the observation program stuff that we're doing, that they do even during treatment. All of those things, I think, help take what would be, a vulnerability. Oh, I can't see enough patients, or, all these problems with maybe referrals, or our doctor maybe isn't super charismatic or something. I don't know, whatever you think the weakness might be there's inherently a strength in us spending just time with people and figuring out unique ways to make that the difference, because it will make all the difference. It's really easy to understand why Smile Direct Club failed, because there was no doctor involved, right? Apart from the clinical side, let's just say there was no relationship built. Okay, no one's building a relationship with a box and a bunch of aligners. Like, that's not happening. There's a doctor attached, there's a team attached. And just to go back to what we talked about earlier, look at the Google reviews. I invite anyone that's listening to this webinar right now to just go and look at Google reviews, maybe of their own office or of the neighboring offices in the area, or some big offices that you admire, and just go see what's actually in the reviews. And I think you'll realize that is what you need to be doing in order to engage with people. Almost none of that has to do with you seeing 3 patients an hour versus 2 patients an hour per chair. Oh, I'm so glad I got in and out of there so fast. That was the fastest experience. I mean, yes, sometimes they like punctuality, right? The majority, I'm promising you, is going to be how they made you feel, how great and supportive the team was, and ultimately, how pleased they were with that relationship that they built.
You guys, we're going to do a 4-hour follow-up podcast, because I could just talk to you about this forever. And I think when I walk into practices, there's so much focus on efficiency, and I'm all about efficiency. I mean, in our business, in ways that we can help our practices be more efficient with our stuff, we are all about that. But rarely do I walk into the practice that is completely booked in every chair all day long. So time is not always the enemy there. I mean, I love this idea of, instead of trying to get everybody into 20-minute increments, how can we actually get everything done in 20 minutes and then use 10 minutes to just not have to worry about moving on to the next patient and invest in the time with that patient? I'm with you. Maybe it's not practical in every case, but even if that's the goal, I mean, anyway, I love that. All right. So to wrap up, I've got 2 more questions. The first one is, what would you say are 1 to 3 high-level things that we've talked about that someone could turn around tomorrow and start the process of implementing?
Yeah, I know. We just talked about the reviews. I would go read at least a dozen of your own reviews if you have multiple. And I would go read a dozen reviews from other offices that you admire, or offices that are in your area, and go back and meet with your TC and say, are the things we doing support the writing of these types of reviews? That's number one. Because if you're not listening to your clients, or these community members that are coming in and doing something different, or trying to tailor it to the things that they felt inspired to write about, then I don't really know what you're doing, right? You're just a problem solver, right? You're not an experience-driven orthodontist, right? So that's the first thing. I think the second thing would be, anyway, I talked about really high conversion rate, and we didn't talk about it too much, but I think with conversion rate, how clear is your message when you meet with a prospective, patient? How clear is the message of what they need to do and the path that you're going to take it? And I would say, tomorrow when you go back into your office, is your TC the person empowered to help them cross the finish line? Or is it you, the doctor? And I would say you need to empower your TC and make sure that they can carry the torch that you're bringing in, right? And make sure they can close that sale, if you want to call it a sale, right? So that would be, again, really clear messaging, specifically relating to closing cases in the TC room. And then a third thing, and we talked a little bit about products, I would say consider the things that you're using in your office as extensions of the experience that you want patients to have. So if you're not using products that have branding behind them, or have an experience component, or have a premium feel to them, think about how that is being perceived in the office, based on not trying to market to price, and not just being the person that's in network, but thinking, I have something different to offer, and here's the evidence that it's different. So that's
those are three really powerful. I think even if they just stopped after number one, but I think all three are really, really great. So the last question, I'm a big believer in story and the story that and understanding the story that other people are living, right? To help us help them. And we've talked a lot about it. Your mindset is clearly in that realm, but there are two elements of every story that make a story really, really good. The villain and the hero. Who or what is your favorite villain? And who or what is your favorite hero?
Oh, that's good. Ooh, yeah, let me think about that. So my wife's a writer. I don't know if we had talked about this, Devin, but she loves talking about heroes and villains. So before I even say that, what's really interesting is that heroes and villains often have the same backstory. It's just how they respond to it. Right. So I think of, for me as a kid, my favorite hero was always the prince in Sleeping Beauty. I don't know why. Something about that. I think it was just protecting, a princess, or just going up against unimaginable difficulty and coming out ahead. Something about that for me as a kid. And I think that stuck with me. I think favorite villain. And again, you have to think about someone who's really either just got a really twisted idea or just someone who's got something to prove. But I really liked the villain in the movie Tangled, the mom, right? Because there's something about her, like, I don't know, her disposition towards like getting what she wanted, but also being like really twisted in how she manipulated, Rapunzel. Something about that I just found incredibly devious, and her way of like, I don't know, just meddling and everything. Something about that, I don't know. I just thought it was especially twisted for a villain. So that's what I'll leave you with.
I love it. And I will have to admit, I'm going to have to go watch Tangled. I've not watched Tangled.
That's great. Super fun.
So I'll have to go, but thank you for sharing your hero. And I love the perception of most time villains and heroes have the same backstory. It's just how they handle it. So I love that. Thank you, Dr. Gage, for giving up your time and sharing your wisdom with us. I really enjoyed this. I know our listeners are going to enjoy it. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course.